Hi, I'm Sarah, and this summer I've been working in Dan Lathrop's lab on experimental and computational fluid dynamics. I would like to acknowledge the rest of the lab. They've given me lots of advice and very useful tips. So before I dive into the details of my research, I want to talk a little bit about the motivations. So this is what laminar flow looks like. It's pretty simple. The layers of the fluid are not interacting, and we know how to model this. This is what turbulent flow looks like. As you can see, it's much more complex, lots of different changes, chaotic changes in all different kinds of variables, and this is what makes it so much more difficult for us to model analytically, so with theory. Also, it's very computationally expensive to model in simulations. And so researchers have recently turned to experiments and machine learning, specifically getting experimental data and doing machine learning on it to better understand turbulence. And turbulent flows are ubiquitous in the fundamental processes of nature, like in the atmosphere, in the oceans, which all significantly influence the weather. So prediction of turbulent flows, if we can predict turbulence better, we might be able to predict the weather better. So what I did this summer was to use machine learning methods to predict temperature fluctuations in turbulent Rayleigh-Bénard convection. And Rayleigh-Bénard convection is one of the most common means in which researchers study turbulence in the lab. So in Rayleigh-Bénard convection, so we heat the bottom, cool the top of the container of fluid, and then you'll start to get these laminar convection cells, kind of like when you boil a pot of water. And when the temperature difference between the top and the bottom becomes large enough, we get all these turbulent phenomena, like the thermal plumes that you can see here. And how we can measure this turbulence is just by measuring the temperature fluctuations at certain locations in the flow. And that is exactly what I did. This is a picture of my real experiment and the diagram. So I took an existing convection apparatus, installed all this thermometry on it. The black dots on the side labeled thermistors. Those are temperature probes, basically. And I labeled them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 thermistors in the flow. And so what I do is I heat the bottom, I cool the top, wait for some turbulent convection to start going, wait for the plates to get to equilibrium, so stop changing in temperature. And then I take data over 2 to 3 hours, and the sampling rate is about 20,000 samples per second. And then I take this data, which is processed or collected using the Arduino, and I do reservoir computing on it in MATLAB on my laptop. So that is the whole methods process. This is what my temperature data looks like. As you can see, it's very turbulent. You can see very high frequency changes and also low frequency dynamics. So you can see how they all dip kind of at the same place. And this is also probably because they're pretty close together in the flow. This is a Welch power density spectrum, which shows what kinds of frequencies are in the temperature fluctuations. And it is fitted with a power law, which is common for Rayleigh-Bénard convection. So the reservoir computing part, which is the machine learning method that I'm using, I first tried training my reservoir on data from 3 thermistors and then trying to predict one. And as you can see, red is prediction, blue is the real data. It's not so great. So new method, or new task, I am training the reservoir on thermistors 1 and 3 and then trying to infer the temperature at the middle thermistor from 1 and 3. And this is easier for the reservoir computer to do because I'm giving the reservoir real data at every time step instead of in the previous task, I was just giving it, training it, and then after training is done, giving it just one real data time step and then letting it predict on from there. So as you can see, blue and red are closer together. Prediction is much improved, and it is also better than a simple mean between the two thermistors, which implies that the reservoir computer might have learned something about the turbulent dynamics of the system. So in conclusion, I developed a low-cost, high-precision temperature measurement system, and the reservoir computer was not so successful at the prediction task, but it was definitely more successful on the inference task. And so what we can get from this is that since inference is basically like local prediction, installing more thermistors at multiple locations, like basically all around my apparatus, would improve the first prediction task that I tried. And this has many applications to improvement of other machine learning methods for prediction of turbulent systems like the weather. So thank you.